The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Magic Bricks webinar, our endeavor to empower you with insights on the real estate, market performance and consumer sentiments on property prices in the next 6 months in India. The topic of today's session is New Property Trends and Buyer-Seller Sentiments in West and South India. And our guest speakers today are E. Jayashree Kuru. She is the Head, Content and Research with Magic Bricks, and Dr. Venkatesh Panchpagesan, Associate Professor of Finance and Coordinator with IIM Bangalore. Jayashree is involved with a number of global research initiatives and specializes in analyzing research data to provide usable solutions to users. She also works with business in using industry dialogues with senior management in her domains of expertise to generate content solutions that keep audience and industry engaged. She has been a business journalist for over 2 decades with the Times of India, the Economic Times, and the Financial Express. She writes extensively on real estate and infrastructure, city management, information technology, HR, and management. Dr. Venkatesh has almost 20 years of experience in academia and in global financial services industry after finishing his PhD in finance from the University of Southern California. He has also worked with Goldman Sachs Asset Management in New York between 2005 and 2008, overseeing trading research for their quantitative hedge funds. He is certified in India as a chartered accountant and a cost accountant and holds a PGDM from IIM Calcutta. So, without further delay, I introduce you all to our guest speaker. Over to you, Jayashree.
Thank you, Aradhana. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Magic Bricks Prop Index webinar and the HSI webinar conducted along with IIM Bangalore. It's great to have you back. This time we are discussing the West and the South. Very quickly, for those of you who don't know what the Prop Index is, the Prop Index is like a tool which provides detailed information on price movement and supply and user demand for multi-story apartments and single floors listed across cities. This includes studio apartments, this includes houses, this includes the single floors. There are many categories of apartments that come into the apartment index. The Prop Index covers it. What we do is take all the properties that are listed on magicbricks.com, aggregate them to localities, then aggregate them to the city, and finally to a national index. In this process, what happens is that you are able to get detailed information on user behavior, listing trends, as well as the supply and demand ratios in different cities at the locality level. This is a unique proposition because it allows you to actually benchmark whatever you're looking for or whatever you're planning to sell in the market, and this allows you to check yourself against the rest of the market. We give you a national property index trend, a city property index trend, a listed price monitor, a rent monitor, a yield meter, the top preferred localities according to demand, supply and demand analytics, locality price ranges, and realty news, which allows you to assess what significant policy changes have taken place and how the media has covered it. Since we're talking about the West and the South, we thought we'll give you a quick snapshot into what has what the Prop Index has come out with. The Pune index rose by about 1%. Mumbai Vadodara remained stable at 0% change. Ahmedabad dropped by about 1%. So largely the Western market has been fairly stable. The same for the southern markets. Bangalore Chennai index rose by 1%. Hyderabad dropped by 1%. But in the previous quarter, Hyderabad had risen. So really it's not a drop, it's a very stable market. In the western region, except for Mumbai, 2 BHK units were the most preferred categories across all other cities with over 50% demand. Now this is a reflection of the state of the economy. When the economy, there is optimism in the market, the consumers look actively for properties. But when the economy has not soared to the heights that it did in the 2006-2007 era, you will find that people are a little more conservative and look at what they need for today rather than they try and stretch and buy something bigger, which explains why the 2 BHK units are the most preferred units. In the southern region too, 2 BHK units top demand across the cities. In Chennai, it was as high as 61%. Hyderabad and Bangalore, it was at about 50% each. Let's go deeper into the western region. If you look at Mumbai, the city index recorded no change, as I said earlier. The number of units on rent went up by 5%, which, because there was more stock, it pushed the rental values down in places like Kharghar in Navi Mumbai. In central Mumbai, there was maximum rental return, about 1.8 to 3.31%, and Sewri and Wadala topped the chart. Now, Sewri and Wadala have benefited from the new link that has, new infrastructure link that has happened. The western suburbs are the most preferred residential destinations for both sale as well as rent. Demand for 1 BHK units continue to outstrip supply. In Mumbai, there seems to be a never-ending demand for 1 BHK units, and the maximum was in areas along the harbour line. About 43% of demand for properties was worth above rupees 1 crore. I have been saying this in my previous webinars as well, that the luxury market is staging a comeback. And we would say about 2 years ago, it was about 3 to 4% of the total demand. Today, it is depending on city. There are city-to-city variations, but today the demand has risen to as much as 11% of the demand in select cities. But it is between about 8% to 11%, which is a huge rise in luxury demand of properties priced above 1 crore. Navi Mumbai and Thane offer the maximum options in the up to rupees 15 lakh category. Now, Thane also offers a lot of premium properties, but it still offers a lot of options in the up to rupees 50 lakh category. Properties priced 1 to 2 crore were most supplied in the western suburbs. You know, areas like Kandivali East, Andheri East, Malad West, Andheri West, Goregaon East. These are all places where you see a large number of 1 to 2 crore properties. In Pune, the city index rose by about 1%. Again, a very stable market. The change in capital values ranged from -4 to +6 in this quarter. The reason why it changed was local reasons, very local reasons. There may have been a large amount of stock coming in. There was a new commercial facility coming up. All this leads to a slight variation, but -4 to +6 is not a big variation in the property market. East and West Pune remain the most preferred residential corridor quarter over quarter. Either IT hubs or areas in the proximity of IT hubs remain the most preferred localities. Clearly, IT is driving the Pune residential market. The highest demand of about 37% and supply of about 34% fairly evenly matched was in the 60 to 1 crore category. This indicates that it is the professionals, the working professionals in the city, largely from the IT sector, who are buying for end use. This is a very healthy trend, because the minute the demand is driven by end users, there is always it's a healthy property market. Luxury properties priced above 1 crore were concentrated in premium areas like Kalyani Nagar, Koregaon Park and Magarpata. The demand for 2 BHK units outstripped the supply by about 7%, which shows that there is not a huge overhang of supply or demand. It is fairly evenly matched in Pune. Demand for 1 BHK units outstripped the supply by 11%. This is an interesting trend. Pune is a city where either students or young professionals come to work. Young professionals are looking for 1 BHK units. In the absence of these units, you can make out that it is undersupplied, so by about 11%. Therefore, you will find that there is an inverse trend, which is for 3 BHK and larger units, which many people come and share. So it becomes like a flatmates concept, where people take one room each of a 3 BHK or larger units, and they pool facilities, they pool the rent. The Ahmedabad City Index, again fairly stable, 1% drop is completely negligible. There was a change in capital values, -7 to +7%, again because of local trends. West Ahmedabad, particularly the SG Highway, remained the most active commercial and residential destination, with a large number of housing projects by the government and private sector. Government is seeding demand. The private sector is also building in that category. Property priced below 3,000 rupees per square foot offered options to investors as well as buyers to earn healthy rental return. You see, what's happening is that anything that is priced less than 3,000 per square foot is giving a good rental return of roughly about 2.5 to 2.8%. The 40 to 70 lakh is a preferred budget in the city. Being a smaller city, Ahmedabad's demand is for a lower price bracket. The supply is today short. The demand is about 16% more than supply. Bhopal and South Bhopal offered a wide range of properties priced between rupees 20 lakh to 1 crore. Very wide range, all types of properties in Bhopal and South Bhopal, extremely active areas. Satellite, Prahlad Nagar, Bokhakdev and Drive-In Road witnessed maximum supply of properties priced at rupees 1 crore and above. Vadodara, a small city, very increasingly active from the real estate perspective. The city index recorded no change. Old Padara Road, Samasavli Road, Bagodia Road, Gothri Road were the important residential growth corridors. Gothri Road, Alkapuri and Vasna Biali Road offered the maximum residential supply. Equal demand was noticed for properties in the rupees 20 to 40 lakh and 40 to 70 lakh categories, roughly over 40% demand each. Let's move quickly to the southern region. The Bangalore City Index rose by 1%, again a stable market. Whitefield, Electronic City, Sarjapur continued to top preference list. Obviously IT is a driver here. Sarjapur, Banerghatta Road, Electronic City and Kanakpura Road witnessed maximum development. This is all parts of the city are active currently. Banerghatta Road, Kanakpura Road, all parts of the city extremely active because of its traditional image, very green areas and still preferred localities. Proximity to workplace, improved connectivity, broader roads, ORRs remain the key drivers. Bangalore, because of the huge amount of traffic problems that the city faces, any transport corridor has a direct impact on residential property values. About 64% of demand for residential properties was in the rupees 40 lakh to 1 crore budget. The supply was about 46. Clearly, demand has grown. Supply is not keeping pace with demand. But the 40 lakh to 1 crore again suggests that these are the professionals working in the city, looking for properties, but are not finding as much as they would like to. Clearly a seller's market, there's more demand, less supply. The 2 BHK category was preferred, as in other cities. The 2 BHK category is preferred with 57% demand and 49% supply. Far more demand for 2 BHK than there is supply. North and South Bangalore offered maximum property options across different budget ranges. Quickly to Chennai, the city index again stable, 1% rise. 50% of localities posted 1 to 5% rise in capital values. 34% localities witnessed a drop. Fairly stable market. Localities which are along the IT corridors, manufacturing corridors are witnessing a rise. South Chennai continued to be a preferred residential zone. 6 out of the top 10 preferred localities were here. Maximum launches were along the OMR, GST and Porur in the April to June quarter, which is the quarter we've been talking about across cities. The 40 to 60 lakh was the preferred budget with more than 30% demand. 25% seek properties in the 20 to 40 lakh. Now 20 to 40 lakh as a in-demand category within a large city is typical of Chennai. Chennai buyers are looking for properties across budget ranges. 20 to 40 lakh, 40 to 60 lakh, clearly showing end users are entering the market looking for properties. Demand is more, supply seems to be a little less. 60% of demand was for 2 BHK units, supply is about 57, fairly evenly matched. 40% of the demand for plots and apartments. Chennai is a typical old-fashioned city which has a robust 40% demand for plots. Most of the supply of properties priced was concentrated in South Chennai. Hyderabad. The city index dropped by 1%, again stable. Values rose by 1 to 5% in 45% of the localities tracked, but 60% of the localities reported a drop in rental values. This is an interesting trend. Do take heed of it. When the values are such that people prefer to buy, the rental values do not rise because more people are veering towards buying properties rather than leasing out properties. So in Hyderabad, there is more buyer interest than rental interest. Gachibowli, Miapur and Kondapur is in demand due to good connectivity and proximity to IT hubs and financial centers. Over 50% of demand was for 2 BHK units, but the supply lagged by 16%. Again, 2 BHK units are a preferred category. If there are any developers listening in, 2 BHK category is one that never goes out of fashion. Most people prefer the 2 BHK category, but it is undersupplied across cities. Over 85% of demand noted for properties priced between 20 lakhs to 1 crore, which means that it's a fairly evenly spaced demand. 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 100, all have good healthy demand. 10% of the demand for luxury units priced at rupees 1 crore and above, a drop of about 10% from the previous quarter. You see, when the Hyderabad market first opened out, there was a huge interest from investors who found it extremely affordable and pushed for larger and more premium properties. That demand is kind of stabilizing, and today this is actually the city's own demand coming up, and this is a healthy trend. Residential plots posted over 25% demand. Like Chennai, Hyderabad is a little more traditional city, and the demand for residential plots continues. Maximum demand was noted in South Hyderabad, followed by the North. Maximum availability of plots was in West Hyderabad. Now, why would you use something like the Prop Index? The Prop Index is useful to the industry because it helps you understand buyer preferences. What types of property, what sizes, configurations, budgets, localities, all this is important when you make your decision of what phase of your project to launch. Government offices and ministries of urban development, it actually allows you to assess the demand and supply gap and helps in policy making. For construction organizations, it helps you forecast the demand and supply situation at the region and the locality level. The Prop Index is probably the only index that tracks the locality level information. Consumers can use this information to endorse their home buying decisions. If you know what the prevailing rates are, there are less chances of you being rooked. If you know that an area is undersupplied, that means that the sellers would it will not negotiate rates. If it is oversupplied, it is a good time for you to go in and negotiate rates. You should be able to understand your localities and cities better. This is one of the premium tools that we are offering the buyer. In addition to this, there are various other tools that we offer. Do go to advice.magicbricks.com and you'll be able to see a host of tools such as calculators, such as locality information and so on. The Prop Index is the umbrella product that we offer you. The real estate trends and analysis gives you an insight into real estate price movements at the locality level on a quarter-on-quarter basis. You can figure out how a locality is performing quarter-on-quarter, year-on-year. Because this Prop Index is 3 years old, you will be able to track quarterly movements over the past 3 years. You can also figure out when to enter a property market and when to exit the property market. This allows you to, the sensible investors are those who not only know what is the right time to enter the market, but who also know when to exit their property investment, very similar to the stock market. If there is a bull run, it's a good idea to sell. It is not as liquid as stocks, but it is something that a lot of investors are looking for. I have also included the methodology, how the prop index is computed. It is based on listings of apartments and their capital and rental values on the website magicbricks.com. Individual properties are aggregated into localities, weighted to the cities, and then to the national index. We remove outliers so that it's very clean data that is used to create the index. Weightage is based on the supply of properties within the locality and within the city. We have 12 cities, about over 620 localities. Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, Kolkata, and Bangalore are the large cities. Pune, Hyderabad, Ahmedabad, Vadodara, Noida, Gurgaon, and Ghaziabad are the tier 1 cities. Capital and rental values are computed on a quarterly basis. The yield on investment is given in graphic as well as numeric form. Extensive user demand analytics are given so that you can figure out whether that area is oversupplied, whether demand matches supply, and so on. The top 10 preferred localities city-wise are showcased so that you can understand whether which are the localities that others are selecting. You can figure out if you have a budget, you can figure out which are the areas where you can find a home in your budget. Real estate news snippets allow you to understand how policies are playing out in the city and how it has been covered in the media. Thank you so much for listening to me. Over to you, Aradhana.
Thank you, Jayashree, for insightful presentation. I'll quickly run it through to Dr. Venkatesh. Can you please share your screen? Over to you, Dr. Venkatesh. Dr. Venkatesh, am I audible to you? It seems we are having a little technical issue. Please be online. We will try to.
Hello.
Hello, is that Uma?
Yeah, Uma here.
Hello, Dr. Venkatesh is not audible. Can we please? I think he has muted himself.
No. Can you hear him now?
No, not so clear.
But you're able to hear him, is it?
Yes, his voice is not much audible. Can you please check the audio setting as it is in?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, Dr. Venkatesh, your voice is there. Can you please continue with the presentation?
Yes, I'm sorry about this.
It's perfectly fine.
I just wanted to welcome all of you to this webinar. We're going to talk about the Housing Sentiment Index that we have constructed with the help of MagicBricks. Just to give an introduction about the IMB research initiative, which is behind the building of this index. We started this initiative about 2 years back to promote scientific research in the real estate space. So we work with the governments, we work with stakeholders like the developers as well as intermediaries like MagicBricks. And our goal is to build information in a scientific way and also disseminate that information so that people can use them for intelligent decision making. Just to get a sense of the Housing Sentiment Index and how we thought about it, we talked about prop index as Jayashree has mentioned to you, how it was constructed and what it does. There are a whole lot of housing indicators that talk about what happened. And so with the Housing Sentiment Index, we are interested in figuring out what will happen. And so our motivation here is to ask potential buyers in this market. And in fact, we also now started with the sellers on what would be the prices in this market 6 months from now. So literally we are talking about 2 quarters out from today. And so we have been doing this for about 5 quarters now. So we have some information about how people's views are and how that gets eventually translated into prices and demand and so on. And so far we have very encouraging result that this Housing Sentiment Index is able to capture eventually the property index like Prop Index and also the National Housing Bank's Residex. So it has been a good lead indicator to what will happen in the future. And so our methodology is based on a very well understood diffusion index methodology. So this is the way most sentiment indices are computed across the world. And so what happens is that we ask buyers a range of questions, and then based on the answers to those questions, we collect them and put them into an index. And the value of the index typically ranges from 0 to 200, with 100 being a metric which indicates that buyers generally expect prices to remain flat. So what we are capturing is whether prices will increase or decrease relative to their current levels. So a value of 200 would mean that prices, all buyers in this market are expecting prices to increase, while a value of 0 would expect all buyers are expecting prices to fall. So the number itself indicates the strength of how many buyers in this market collectively view the prices to either go up or go down. There are two things to look for as a user of the index. So one is the absolute level of the index. So whenever we talk about a number which is greater than 100, for example, then you know collectively the buyers are expecting prices to go up, and similarly for the numbers below 100. So that's a very simple interpretation of the index. But another thing that you could do with the index is look at the changes. What happens to this index quarter to quarter? So for example, last quarter it could be 120, so expecting prices are going up, and then this quarter it could be 110. So even though the overall, the absolute level of index suggests that prices will go up, that more buyers are expecting prices to go up, but collectively that number is coming down over time. And so that itself is another indicator for you whether the bull market or the bear market, as Jayashree mentioned, is thinning down or not. So we do a very comprehensive coverage. Our data is collected along with Magic Bricks. So we pretty much cover 10 out of the 12 cities that Prop Index covers. And we also, within each major city, we also have micro market analysis. So that sort of gives you an overall picture. And in another quarter or so, we will start putting down how our housing sentiment index actually is able to predict what happens to the actual prices. So as you are, just to again recall, the housing sentiment index is capturing what prices will be 2 quarters later. So for example, this quarter we are looking Q1 of 2014-15. We are looking at what will happen by Q3 of 2014-15. So that's very important to remember, and also being able to use that in conjunction with the prop index that Jayashree just talked about. I'm just going to now introduce you to my colleague Uma Sitaraman. She is the lead researcher for Housing Sentiment Index, and she has been with us for more than a year now. And she is going to walk us through the exact details about this quarter's HSI.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. We'll go through some details city by city, specifically covering the southern and western regions today. So for this first quarter of 2014, the aggregate HSI came in at 118. So if you aggregate all 10 cities, it was up when compared to the previous quarter's value of 108. We also have to remember that this survey was done a little after the general election results, so there was bound to be some optimism in the society. So looking at Bangalore, over the last 4 quarters, Bangalore has been consistently maintaining a positive HSI, and it has the highest HSI among the 10 cities at 143. And it's also been above 100, 100 being the neutral value from the beginning. Since inception 5 quarters back, it's been above 100 consistently, and this is just the only city that's been consistently above 100 and with a positive sentiment. And again, like Professor Venkatesh mentioned, we also run a sellers index parallelly, and Bangalore happens to be the most preferred destination for people move all across India. So which kind of goes in line with the sentiment too. Hyderabad has been pretty volatile last 2 or 3 quarters, understandably because of the Telangana issue. But this time, since the survey was just after the resolution, it bounced back very well and came up 22% above after a decrease of 4% in the last quarter. Chennai has been a pretty steady market and has again risen over the last 3 quarters, and there was a further 7% increase this time with sentiment, and the final Chennai numbers coming in at 124, that's just after Bangalore and Kolkata. Again, Mumbai and Pune have been pretty steady markets. Mumbai did witness some negativity initially. The sentiment was slightly below 100 the last 2 or 3 quarters, but it's bounced back. It bounced to 107 now. A lot of infrastructure development in Mumbai region is contributing to this. And also, out of the 10 cities surveyed, Ahmedabad was the only city this quarter with a drop in sentiment, and also the only city with a sentiment below 100, came in at 86. But again, it's a very localized market, so we'll have to wait a few quarters and see how how steady the market is. This is just summarizing the numbers for you. As you can see, we had a positive across 9 out of the 10 cities, and all the southern regions are positive. So looking at some specific analytics that we carry out city by city and also some micro markets, 44% of people in Bangalore, surveyed in Bangalore, earn less than 10 lakh, and over 40% are looking for property within 40 lakhs. Now this is all again something that is consistent across most cities surveyed, and a very good point for affordable housing. So a lot of people are looking for property within 20 to 40 lakhs. That seems to be the most popular range. And most people surveyed happen to fall under the rupees 10 lakh, at the most 10 to 20 lakh bracket. Again, looking in terms of timing, 45% want to purchase property within the next 6 months in Bangalore, which is a good sign. Although if you look across India, there was slight delay. So on the average, people want to buy, say, within 8 months, and this quarter it rose to a little over 8 months. Still, Bangalore happens to be one city which where people are really bullish about the markets and want to buy as soon as possible. And out of those 45% again, 37% prefer South Bangalore. Now, like Jayashree mentioned, a lot of development, a lot of infrastructure development is happening in the southern region. So South Bangalore happens to be the most preferred location. There is again a huge preference for plots when compared to other cities. So 52% prefer plots, while 24% prefer land. I'm sorry, I think it should be 52% prefer apartments. So apartments are the ones that are most preferred, and land backing in as a second. IT sector happens to be the major factor that's leading to this demand in Bangalore specifically. 37% are from the IT sector, and 12% happen to be the self-employed. Again, the sentiment for self-employed again being very high. Moving to Hyderabad. Hyderabad also has a huge percentage that want to buy within the next 6 months, which is a very good sign, which also means that you probably are going to see a lot of these people actually transacting in the next 6 months. Of course, there's another set that also wants to wait over a year. So this is probably these are probably the ones who are actually waiting for things to stabilize, and for regional preferences, and then will make their final decision. Again, flats are most preferred. 42% prefer flats, and there is a huge preference for villas from Hyderabad. 37% prefer villas, and the sentiment is also strong for those who do prefer villas. One other trend that we are noticing is a lot of people whom we survey already live in their own house but would like to make another purchase, which probably means that they're either moving into a bigger accommodation or are looking to move for personal reasons. But this again is a big percentage of the respondents. So in Hyderabad, 32% of those who are living in their own house are looking to buy, while 56% are living in rented accommodation currently. But again, sentiment is positive across all regions, whether it's the ones that are already living in their own house or in rented accommodation. North Hyderabad witnessed a slight decrease in HSI this quarter, but still ended up above 100, whereas all the other regions witnessed a positive. Moving to Chennai, Chennai has been consistently steady over the last 3 quarters. Again, South Chennai, like Jayashree mentioned, happens to be the most preferred location. Central Chennai witnessed a huge jump in sentiment this quarter, so came in at 146. In terms of age bracket, 30 to 39-year-olds are the major buyers, the prospective buyers, followed by the 40 to 49-year-olds. And as you can see, if you look at sentiment this quarter, all sentiments all across are mostly above 100, somewhere between 110 to 135 in that range. So there is a general, like a positive sentiment all across. Within Chennai, 31% are ready to wait for a year or more, but 45% want to again make a purchase within 6 months. So the IT sector is one sector which doesn't seem to be that bullish about Chennai, whereas the manufacturing sector seems to be, again, positive. So coming to Mumbai, there's 22% of buyers who are looking to buy properties in the 20 to 40 lakh range, and another 24% looking to buy within the 62 or 1 crore. Again, in Mumbai, there's also another huge percentage that's looking to buy the high-end properties that are above 1 crore. So here again, you see a consistent pattern of 41% wanting to buy within the next 6 months, while about 27% would like to wait for some time and then make their decision. So now self-employed are about 11%, and but they have been over the past 2 or 3 quarters consistently just about optimistic, coming in between 100 and 105, whereas IT sector is very bullish in Mumbai, comes in at 143. Pune again has been one of the very steady markets. Here again, you have a major percentage that wants to buy in the 20 to 40 lakh range. Now, across all cities, this is the most preferred range, and after this, the 40 to 60 lakh range. Both Mumbai and Pune, there's more people who prefer flats. In Mumbai, it's about 90% who prefer flats, whereas in Pune, 70% prefer flats, and there is some small percentage that would still like to buy land. Again, there's a major IT factor in Pune, as Jayashree mentioned. So 35% who responded are from the IT sector, and they are pretty bullish about the markets. And Pune manufacturing sector is also another stronghold, and they again are very positive about sentiment. So Pune is another market where you can see some consistent demand over the next quarters. No, Ahmedabad faced a decrease in sentiment. So about 59% of the respondents cite financial reasons for either postponing their decisions or for being cautious, while the rest of them say they kind of attribute their purchase decisions to market conditions, basically the macroeconomic factors. Here, about 65% prefer flats, and there's a 15% following for villas also. Again, 36% who already own accommodation are looking to buy another accommodation. Now, this is again kind of a healthy trend almost across all cities, where you have people going in for, like for purchase, not just for primary residence, but in terms of investment. And 50% of respondents in Ahmedabad fall into 30 to 39-year-old bracket, but there is a major group of young followers. This is again a predominant factor only restricted to Ahmedabad, with 25 to 29-year-olds also form a pretty decent percentage that are looking to buy. Although they don't seem to be that positive in terms of sentiment, there is a huge percentage that's looking to buy property. We carried out the survey across all 10 cities along with Magic Bricks. So there is a standard questionnaire, and it just covers basically like questions that fall into 3 groups. One is the demographics, so the age of the person, the salary range, so on, and then their property preferences. So property preferences in terms of would you like to buy now? Why are you waiting? Is it because of personal reasons, market reasons, so on? And then the micro market questions, which specifically ask where within the city would you like to make your purchase, and what your general sentiment is about the specific region within the city. And now it's been five quarters, so we are able to get a pattern for all cities. And like we said, there's a lot of macroeconomic effect on the sentiments. And in general, you do see that sentiments, like Professor Venkatesh mentioned, tend to predict what people actually do. So we are in the process of trying to, get to you that these sentiments are in a way going to predict whether people are buying. So where are people buying? Are they going to buy in Bangalore? And when do they actually make their purchase? When they say 6 months to 8 months, is that really happening? So we should be able to share that data with you in the coming quarters. Thank you all. Aradhana, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks to you as well for this insightful presentation. Let's quickly take up the questions now. I request Jayashree to read out the questions and their answers so that all our users may listen to the insights.
Thanks, Aradhana. Let's start our question and answer section now. We have a user who has Satish Alexander, who said, should I consider buying plots across Outer Ring Road? I think he's referring to Hyderabad here, despite the fact that development would take another 5 to 6 years to make it fit for end use. Satish, you are talking about plots. Plots can be held for a long period of time. If you look at the Hyderabad ORR, it has taken a while, and it is still a while away from completion. So you're spot on when you say that it is going to take another 5 to 6 years to make it fit for end use. You have areas, I looked at Magic Bricks and found that there are areas such as Shankarpalli, Ibrahimpatnam Road and Bhavanpalli are some of the regions along the ORR where there is a supply of residential plots within a small budget. You also have, Shankarpalli offers land at about 3,000 per square yard, while plots in Ibrahimpatnam and Bhavanpalli are available in 100 to 500 square yards. Now, plots in Shankarpalli are approved by the DTCP, Bhavanpalli and Ibrahimpatnam are legalized by the Hyderabad Metropolitan Development Authority. Now these plots are converted land and are authorized for residential houses. So in terms of plotted development, is it available? Yes, it is available. The HMDA and the DTCP approved plots are part of gated communities, and they come with features such as drainage, water and electricity supply, parks, inner roads and so on. Shankarpalli has some Gram Panchayat approved plots which are priced low because of the lack of amenities. Normally when it comes into the HMDA, the development work picks up pace, and therefore those are higher priced. So you see, between 20 to 30 lakh, you should be able to get a 200 square yard plot in a place called Kokapet, while ORR localities offer the similar size land for about 5 lakh. That is the differential. But like you said, it will take a while, and if you're investing, you should invest for the long term, exceedingly long term, because before at least 8 years, you won't be able to exit that with a good return on your investment. Let's go on to the next question. We have Sandeep who has asked, you mentioned Bangalore to be a seller's market. Can you please provide details? How much is the untapped market? Now, I'll tell you why I said that, Sandeep. It's not that across Bangalore it's a seller's market. You see, there's a 64% demand for residential properties in the 40 lakh to 1 crore budget, while the supply is only 46%. So clearly there's more demand than supply, and when the demand exceeds supply, it's likely that you will not be able to negotiate much. So in that 40 lakh to 1 crore budget, that is where I said that it will be a seller's market, because that is where the maximum demand is and the supply is trailing significantly. We have Vikram Rao who has said he's planning to buy a home solely for rental income in Bangalore. However, it has been difficult to find the capitalization rate around the city to assess the fair value. How can I measure the fair value of a home to buy? Yeah. Vikram, one of the reasons why we included what we call a yield meter, though this is a simplistic yield meter, we have you should be able to figure out what is the amount that you're investing in the property and how much is the rental return from this property. Now, once you assess this, you will be able to compute your basic yield. Along with this, you should also actually load on various levels of how much you're spending in your your EMIs, how much you're spending when it comes to municipal taxes and so on, how much is the interest rate, and all that is computed to get a final yield value. But a basic yield trend is what the prop index shows you. Professor Venkatesh, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah. So we actually have been doing some work, and I think a lot of times, as Jayashree pointed out, there are a lot of these hidden expenses that owners don't factor in when they look at rental yields. Things like, for example, even maintenance. Sometimes the deposits that you need to put in for if you're in Bangalore, the electricity authority like BESCOM. So those are all usually borne by the landlord and not by the tenant. And those are literally free money that you need to set aside, which you won't probably get it with interest. So these are things that I think if you want to seriously compute the rental yield, you should take what is available in the MagicBricks website and then add to it a series of expenses, both in terms of buying the property as well as in maintaining the property over time. And of course, like in 3-4 years, if you're looking at it, then you also have to look at revamping the property to keep the values up. And so I would think you should do a little bit of homework. There are information available, and you can contact us. We can also give you some information separately, but be aware of these hidden expenses.
Thanks, Professor Venkatesh. Let's go on to the next question. There is some Vijay Ganesh who wants to know what are the prospects of South Chennai, Medavakkam, OMR, GST area. Now, Vijay, when you look at a property, especially in a city like Chennai, which is driven by a professional segment of the market, you have to, these are all areas which are driven by the IT. OMR, GST is clearly along the IT corridor. And in Chennai, there is a robust demand for both purchase as well as lease from the IT segment. So if you buy along this corridor, you will be able to get regular rental returns, and there has been a growth in the price levels. So you will also be able to get a return on your investment in the long term. If you're buying a property that is ready built, that means that if the property is ready for occupancy either 6 months from now or already ready for occupancy, you start getting your rental returns as soon as you get possession and the house is ready for occupancy. At that point, if you are taking a loan, and if this is an investment prospect, you will be able to offset a part of your EMI through the rental return itself. Therefore, it will not be a big load on you. The rental return works towards paying off your EMI. In addition, when you see that the values have risen enough for you to exit the property investment, you would be able to exit you should be able to hold it for about 3 to 4 years so that you get a good exit value. Professor Venkatesh?
I don't have anything major to add on this. I think I think you can have I won't add anything here.
Oh,
thanks.
We'll take a query from Pune. I have Jaydeep Nulkar writing, I have the following question. There are quite a few projects of independent plots coming up around Pune. The supply seems too big to look at it as a potential investment opportunity. What is your opinion on looking at it as return on investment, and which side of the city would you prefer to invest? Jaydeep, I think I have a couple of what I would call handy tips for you. look at it like this. If you have a lot of supply, like you said, it won't, the values won't rise in the short term. The values won't rise in the short term. But what you can do is buy from those developers. Normally when you buy plots, I always recommend that as a small investor, do buy your plots from from reputed developers where you know that your investment is safe. That developer is actually the custodian of your plot till you decide to exit it or build on it or something like that. So it's a good idea to buy within gated communities sold by developers who have, you must check on the legality of the whole project, check out the approvals, make sure that it is approved for residential purposes and so on. Now once you've done that, you will see that along any corridor, and today you find that all development is happening along road corridors. Along any corridor, the value of the property is basis the reputation of the builder, the type of asset management that the builder offers, and these are all how good the development is by the developer. So when you buy a plot, you're not just buying a piece of land. You're actually buying into a development, and that determines what your returns are going to be. If the place is oversupplied, but you have bought from a premium developer, your property will command, your plot will command a premium value over other properties in the vicinity. Always go for the best. Now, suppose the best is not affordable to you, at least make sure that all the legality is good, the location is good, the location of your individual plot is good. It is all these impact the rise of your property value.
I just wanted to add one thing. So I think, as Jayashree said, it is very important to do your homework, and especially when you're buying not a finished property, but more in terms of a concept or a hole in the ground. So you need to have, as she said, legal information taken care of. There's also a lot of these small things which you would not know, like whether the water connection is there, the utility approvals are being made. So a lot of this will affect the delivery and also the development, the rate of development in that area. So if you're looking at an area where there's a lot of interest, so that's a good sign. But at the same time, if you want to make sure that you are able to capitalize on that interest, you should be able to convert this into something of a product or a property that can be either used or sold. And for that, you need to either go by the reputation of the developer, which is a good indicator or a signal for you. But at the same time, if you can do your own homework, it might help. If it is not a reputed developer, at least you will have an idea of how fast you can convert this investment into either a useful investment or a profit.
We will continue with Pune. There is one more user, Vijay Kotak, who has asked a very detailed question. Please explain the overall outlook, plus and minus of these areas in Pune: Pimple, Nilak, Wakad, Baner, Balewadi, Hinjewadi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Bypass Road. Personally, I found Pimple, Nilak and Wakad very developed and convenient. Now, while I can't possibly tell you the pluses and minuses of every one of these areas, I will give you a rule of the thumb. I think, Vijay, then you will be able to answer this on your own. When you make an investment, a property investment, please check out which locality you're buying and what are the drivers of that locality. If you look at areas such as Wakad, Baner, and so on, they are driven by the IT corridor. Now, if you look at Baner, Baner is not a new locality, right? Baner, Aund, and so on have been the Pashansus Road. These are all areas that came up way back in the early 2000s. So why is it coming into prominence today? Because these are well-developed localities which have a premium tag to them. A lot of the traditional Puneites did use Aund, Baner, and so on as their backup areas. So the younger generation actually bought into these areas early on in between 2001 and 2003. But today it is again in the news because the Hinjewadi IT corridor is driving these areas and there is fresh interest in these areas. Now they already have a premium tag because the gentry staying there are good. So the professionals use these as areas of areas where they would like to stay. There is a good rental demand, and there is also a good sale demand. On the other hand, Wakad also is driven by the IT corridor. Any area where the demand is good is a place where you can invest. Now, what you want to know is what is the overall lookout. I'm assuming that because you're giving a large range of properties, you are looking at it as an investor. As an investor, hold a fairly long-term horizon, at least 4-5 years, for best returns. I personally think that nobody can go wrong in 5 years, except if in that 5 years, at the end of those 5 years, if it's a down cycle, hold on till the markets improve and sell. In 5 years, you will never lose money. But at the same time, you should be constantly checking out what the returns on your investment are, and that is where the housing sentiment index, the property index, and so on, these help you to assess whether it's the right time to sell. But I would say that if you like a property, if you like a locality, and like you said, the Pimple Nilak area, roughly about 5850 to 6950 are the capital values in this area. If you find that convenient, please go ahead. But do check out the legality of the properties, check out the approvals, and also check out the developer. Go with a good developer, it works. Venkatesh?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to add one thing, not specific to this set of areas in Pune, but more in terms of the developed areas versus newly areas. How do you look at the two? And our view is generally the developed areas have a more stable infrastructure. At least I'm talking about not really 100-year-old areas, but 10 to 15-year-old areas. Better infrastructure, and more importantly, there is a stable demand. And I think to that extent, if you want to even rent it out, the rental demand is pretty stable also in those areas. So it's a little bit of a easier bet. I think you will have to give up a bit of the upside. It won't rapidly appreciate as you would in a new area which is getting hot. But at the same time, if you're looking at some sort of a decent return, I think these areas are pretty good to look at.
Let's go on to our next query. There is Vijay Kotak who has said, is it okay to book a property when a famous builder says 80% documents are clear and 20% are pending? Some facts about this project: they have the land from the last 1 year, but they have not launched the project. Still they are taking booking, and they said 60% booking is done. They have not named the project so far. They are just telling the project, saying that the project is in Wakad. Plans and model of the society and building are not ready. They say for this project afterwards, if you don't like the design of the project, we will refund 100% booking amount. This is a Wakad project, and he has mentioned where who the developer is. Now let me put it like this. You are satisfied. I am assuming that you're satisfied with the developer and his reputation. The developer saying that I have a project coming up here, you can invest with me on the basis of my reputation. And he's saying that I think you will like it, but if you don't like it, I will refund. Right? These are the terms of your agreement. A lot of people buy it on these grounds because when you take a big risk, you get a good return. Obviously, the developer will be giving you a watered down rate. You are getting a good rate here. Once the project is launched, the rates will be significantly higher. The developer, you are satisfied with his reputation. You are satisfied with the place that you're buying. There is still a risk involved. 80% of the approvals have come. 20% maybe what is the crucial. You don't know what the 20% is. However, if the developer is assuring you and you're willing to take a risk, and I'm again re-emphasizing that when you buy in a pre-launch phase, you are taking a risk. If you have the appetite for the risk, you've chosen a good developer and you're saying, I think I can go with it. The developer is also assuring you that I will return the money if you're not satisfied with whatever it is that you're getting. The reason why they pre-launch is that the developers like to get some money from the market. have they sold 50%, 60%? That is immaterial. Are you satisfied with the deal is what is important to you. There are I would always advise small investors, be very careful before you invest in a pre-launch property. Because you put your money in, and even if you get your 100% out, how much, why are you parking your funds in a project where you're not 100% sure? Having said that, if you have the appetite for the risk and the developer is good, please go ahead. Venkatesh?
Yeah, one thing, I think the risk is obviously there. I think nowadays your recourse also is changing with all these new Supreme Court judgments and the courts trying to empower the customer. So you do have some sort of recourse, but I would think one more time, because a lot of times when developers say they can return the money, you have to assume that it may not be credible. So as long as you can ensure it in some way, whether it's through a contract where it's written down that they will return the money in full and what kind of consequences if they don't, then you are in a safer zone. Otherwise, you are taking quite a bit of risk. But of course, the return is also there. I mean, this is where you have, it's just like the stock market where there is some risk, there's also return. And if you don't want to stomach that risk, then I think you should not be in this. Over to you,
Thanks,
Jasha.
Venkatesh. Yeah, I'll take the next question. This is from Sanjeev Bhatnagar. We are well over our designated time, but since there are some queries here, we thought that we'll complete these queries. These are the last few queries that we are answering. There is Sanjeev Bhatnagar who has asked, what is the benefit of investing in a redeveloped property? Does it have a better scope of appreciation in Mumbai? Now, Sanjeev, it is like this. Professor Venkatesh spoke about investing in traditional, well-established areas. Redeveloped properties actually come up in areas that have been in existence for a while. These areas have the benefit of existing demand. In some cases, the demand may have gone down because the quality of the asset has gone down. And in redevelopment, what's happening is you're modernizing that locality, you're reinfusing some interest in that locality and in that property. And it is modern property in an old locality. The demand drivers are all there. The new property are there. And therefore, it is a good idea to invest. Just make sure a lot of the redevelopment is being done by small local developers. So if you're buying into a redeveloped property, if it is a completed property, I think the risks are minimal. If you're buying into a property that is going in for redevelopment, do check out the background of the developer, check out whether the project will actually be delivered on time, because some redevelopment projects have been delayed. So do your homework before you put your money in, but otherwise I think it's a good idea.
I mean, I just wanted to add the legislative risk there. I think some of the redevelopments have been put on hold because of the changes in the laws concerning this and the amount of FSI they will get. So you have to also take that risk, but some of those information is easily available, and maybe your developer is also telling you upfront what sort of legal issues that might arise in the redevelopment stage. But I would just go with what Jayashree said, in the sense there is it's an established area where you do have some advantages of building a newer development in an old area. Because the demand is stable, the infrastructure is there, the setup is already well established.
Okay, thanks, Venki. Let's go on to the next query. There is a Deepak Chavan who has said, do you think Ahmedabad will do exceptionally well after Mr. Modi becomes the Prime Minister? Let me put it like this, Deepak. A city's real estate market does not depend on one personality. While it does help that Prime Minister Modi is from Ahmedabad, and he has actually go with his track record. He has done a lot of good to the Ahmedabad market, and if that market has good infrastructure, it has good industrial profile, and therefore when the manufacturing sector picks up, it will be one of the early adopters of manufacturing, then that city has good demand. People do not put their money because a government came from a certain city. People put their money in because the prospects of that market are good. After all, it is your money and you will put it in a place where you think your money will grow. How do you assess whether your money will grow? There is a lot of emphasis on the Mumbai-Ahmedabad link. If that link happens, the high-speed link happens, the prospects of Ahmedabad will definitely go up. If you look at the manufacturing corridor that is being evolved in Ahmedabad, around that you will see a lot of demand in various segments of the property market. You already see some amount of movement in places like Vapi in Gujarat because of its proximity to Mumbai. And there are a lot of people who are moving to Vapi because it is very, very cheap. There are good developers from Mumbai who are building in Vapi, and the reason why they're going is not because it is Gujarat. They're going there because the consumer is interested in buying at a lower cost in these areas, and it is well connected to Mumbai. So currently the driver is Mumbai. If the Ahmedabad market takes off, maybe the driver will be Ahmedabad. So property markets are actually, there is a method in that whole structure, and you should be able to understand the method. Venkatesh?
I mean, I have just one simple thing. I think as you said, there is not one person's effect, but if good policies are continued, I think the Ahmedabad market will continue to flourish. If it is not, it will go back. So that's my answer.
Let me pick up a question from Kanchana Dwarkanath, who says that an expat friend of mine wants to buy a villa, but she heard that North Bangalore has little groundwater. In that case, would it be better option to buy in South Bangalore, or is West Bangalore a good option as it might grow due to the announced industrial corridor? You have actually put the answers into your question, Kanchana. Each part of the city has different drivers. North Bangalore is driven by and expats particularly are looking at North Bangalore because of its proximity to the international airport. As you know, the international airport in Bangalore and Hyderabad are extremely difficult to access from the city. They are way out, and therefore all the way from the airport to the main city, there is a lot of expat interest. But like you said, there are issues of water, and therefore when you buy a project, you must really figure out where the water is coming from. It's not that every project in North Bangalore has to be dismissed because there is a groundwater issue. South Bangalore, West Bangalore, each area has its own drivers. If you look at the Whitefield, Marthahalli stretch, it is definitely the Electronic City, Sarjapur Road. They are all driven by IT. There are manufacturing stretches where that is the driver. If you look at places like Banerghatta Road, Kanakpura Road, these are old traditional areas of the city where the sheer extent of the greenery and the comfort of staying there makes people buy in those areas, and there is a lot of development happening there. So the drivers of the city are different. What you have to see is what are your drivers? Why are you buying, and what type of person are you buying it for? If it is for self-use, what is most convenient to you? See if there is a new infrastructure link that's coming up. If there is a traffic bottleneck somewhere, will it be eased in the future? Is the metro coming there? Is there a link road that will ease the traffic bottleneck? These are all important considerations when you buy a property. Venkatesh?
Yeah, I mean, I have personal interest. I've been an expat, and also I'm currently living in southeast Bangalore, so I can give you a good sense of what sort of water issues there. I think water in Bangalore is a big issue next to traffic, and I think people are recognizing it slowly. The only thing that I would put in is that what the situation today may look quite different to what will be the situation a few years from now. And that again depends on the legislative will to do things like rainwater harvesting and stuff like that, where it can be mandated. So I think Bangalore receives a fair amount of rainfall. So if that can be tapped, some of the water shortage can go away, and some of the developments can suddenly become very attractive again, because water is not a problem. But if without that future legislative action, in the way it is currently going, water is a big issue, so you should definitely factor that in, along with the other drivers that Jayesh was talking about. But as I said, things can change, and I've seen it in Chennai where rainwater harvesting has become very, very successful in terms of converting or improving the water table and making less reliance on the corporation's water or on the public water. So I think that's something that you should factor in. For example, in Bangalore also, even if you have access to the public water, which is really the Kaveri water, it's still not guaranteed. You know, nowadays most places get 2 days a week of water, and so even that can diminish over time as more and more people upstream start claiming it. So I think water is an important factor, but things can change dramatically. So your ability to take a decision today has to factor in some of those things, and these are risk factors.
We'll take another 2 questions. I think there are people who are asking about specific projects. There is PK Vishwanath who's asked about Brigade Golden Triangle Signature Towers in Bangalore. There's Vijay Kotak who's asked Punewal project in Punewala, Pune. The whole purpose of this webinar is to throw light on how you should address an investment and not to tell you buy in one particular project or the other. So while we are not averse to talking about projects, I would say that, you know, I would not like to influence your property buying decision. What I would like to do is give you some tools that will make your property decision more effective. Therefore, I would say, rather than ask, how is this project good? Maybe I will say it's good, but it may not be good from your perspective. So do use all the tools that we're giving you. Also use the advice that we're giving you to take decisions on your own. And I would rather refrain from giving individual advice on individual projects. Venkatesh?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very hard to give an individual thing without feeling, you know, we are saying something which may be misconstrued by listeners. I think our goal is to give you a set of factors and the process by which you want to use those factors. Beyond that, I think it should be your call in terms of, because ultimately even some of the factors might be bad, but you might still want to be taking more risk. And that is also a reasonable approach, but it's just that it's your call.
Yeah. I'll take a question from a gentleman called Vijay Potukuchi, who has said, do budgets in the research include cost of amenities or not? This changes the price drastically. I would agree with you, Vijay. When we are going with listed property values. Now look at it like this. When you list your property value and you are asking for a certain value from the buyer, you are actually saying that this is my asset and I'm expecting this much from the buyer. Obviously, there will be other costs over and above this, right? If it is a new project, and at one point of time, along with the National Housing Bank, Magic Bricks had done a study on transaction cost analysis. In this, you see, whenever you buy a property, there are I'm sorry, there was a phone ringing here. Let me just complete this. There was whenever you look at a property, there are many transaction costs that come along with that. This includes the cost of the water and power meters. It also includes the cost of the parking areas that you would like to purchase. It includes the property taxes that you will pay annually. It includes the municipal, the various municipal taxes that you have to pay. It also includes the cost of maintenance. Does that come into the property price? Of course it doesn't. These are all additional costs. So when you say that a property costs this much, there will be some add-on costs, and it is important that you compute. It is a good question that you've asked, and I have to make it clear to all users that property values are the value of the asset. The value of the services are the add-on values, and that does not get reflected in the property value. Venkatesh?
I mean, I think you said it very appropriately. I think the property prices is, in order to make it very standard, I think we use it, the value of services would vary quite a bit. And I think we need to account for that at the user level. But this is something that is as a starting point for your analysis.
Right. One more query we will take. What kind of returns can one expect in commercial property vis-a-vis residential? Rule of the thumb, commercial property gives 8 to 12%, residential property gives 1 to 3.5, max 5%. Residential property is easier to purchase. For commercial property, you have to be very, very sure that there is a rental demand. It is subject to the vagaries of the economy. So while you can get up to 12% return, it really does depend on the how the economy is performing and how the demand for commercial property is. When you're buying shops, there are many small investors who buy shops and are stuck with them because that part of the market did not rise. There is a huge risk involved. The end users should be checking out what kind of demand there is, or at least be able to project with some level of confidence whether there will be a demand into the future. For a small investor, commercial investment in commercial property is difficult to manage because you will be dependent on brokers and other market transactors, and users in the commercial market will not be approaching you. So these are some of the things that you should be keeping in mind. Having said which, if somebody says that I will sell you a property, a commercial property with an assured return for 3 years, for 3 years you will get your return if the developer is good. But after that, after those 3 years, you're pretty much on your own. So if you want to hold it for as long as you get steady returns, maybe you can do that and exit, but depending on the market cycles. Commercial property is extremely subject to market vagaries. Venkatesh?
I mean, I think as a small and individual investor, you should not be in commercial property at all. There are many factors that might go against you. Your bargaining power is very low. If you are holding one small part of a larger commercial property, then as Jayashree said, there's a whole lot of dependencies on brokers to get you the best deal, and it's very hard to have one commercial property's values quite different to the others. So to that extent that if your neighbors are not happy with you, they can collectively do something to hurt your interest. So I think commercial property is played by larger players, more institutional players, and who have various exit options compared to a smaller investor or individual investor. So I think I would suggest don't go for it unless it's a very small commercial property where you have a very clear demarcation of your interests that you can separate out and individually market it. Otherwise, just don't get it.
We really have run out of time, and we have to apologize to the ones whom we have not answered yet. All I can say is please post your queries on openhouse.magicbricks.com. We will get a lot of experts like Professor Venkatesh and many others to answer your queries. There is a gentleman called Vikram Rao who has come back with an add-on query. Vikram, we will be answering you by email, or maybe we'll post it on Open House. Do come and visit Open House. You'll get your answers. Thank you so much. We're completely overwhelmed by the response to this this webinar. We promise you that there will be many more for you to participate in. Thank you so much for participating. Professor Venkatesh?
I also want to thank you very much. I think we also learn a lot from listening to you and talking to you. So please do visit us in the future webinars and also ask us questions. We'd be more than happy to share with you our research and our insights into various aspects of the real estate industry.
Thank you so much, and back to you, Aradhana.
And I am really thankful to our guest speakers today for conducting this informative webinar with us. It was indeed a great session. I would also like to thank all our participants for their support in making this webinar a success. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Jayashree. Thank you, Dr. Venkatesh, for taking the time out and having us. I hope you have a great evening ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.